Welcome back. This is Mr. Bowlby. We are reading the fourth grade CKLA reader for the Middle Ages. That's Domain 2. This is Chapter 5, The Power of the Church. The big question is, what practices of the Middle Ages show the influence and power of the church? It is 6 a.m. The church bells are ringing to welcome the day and to summon you to church. The early morning sunlight illuminates the stained glass windows. Sometimes, at daybreak, you attend a church service before starting work. You pray often, and your life is anchored to the church. Stained glass windows in the Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, France, built in the 1200s. Wow. It may be impossible for us to understand just how important the Christian church was to most Europeans in the Middle Ages. Not only did the local lords have great influence over people's lives, but the church did too. The power of the church had grown gradually over a long period of time. Christianity is based on the teachings of a man named Jesus who lived hundreds of years ago before the Middle Ages began. Jesus' followers were known as Christians, and they still are. In the first 300 years after Jesus' life, Christianity grew slowly. In fact, in the early years of the ancient Roman civilization, Romans were not permitted to practice the Christian faith. Later, Christianity was tolerated as one religion among several. Eventually, it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. Christianity spread throughout the empire. As it spread, the power and influence of the church in Rome grew. The Pope was the leader of the Western Church. Under the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, Christianity was accepted as one of the several religions in the Roman Empire. As time went on during the Middle Ages, conflicts developed between Eastern followers of the church who spoke Greek and Western followers of the church who spoke Latin. Finally, in 1054, the two sides split over differing beliefs. The Eastern Church was called Orthodox. Members of the Orthodox Church thought their beliefs were orthodox or correct. The Western Church, based in Rome, called Catholic. Members of the Catholic Church thought their beliefs were Catholic or universal. The two Christian churches that emerged during the Middle Ages still exist today. In Western Europe, almost every village and town had a church. Most people attended church on Sunday. In addition, certain days were considered holy days to mark important events in the life of Jesus and his followers. People did not work on these days, but instead went to church. Some holy days were feast days, and other holy days were days of fasting. Christmas, an important Christian holiday, was a time of feasting or celebration. The 40 days before Easter, another Christian holiday, were times of fasting called Lent. Architects and craftsmen in the Middle Ages built beautiful churches to express their love for God. New engineering skills enabled stonemasons to create a style of architecture later became known as Gothic. They built tall towers, arches, rose windows, and spires. Sometimes it took hundreds of years to complete a great medieval cathedral. Holy shrines dedicated to people who played an important role in the history of Christianity were scattered across Western Europe. These shrines were usually placed where religious figures had been killed or buried, or where miracles were believed to have happened. Most Christians hoped to go on at least one journey or pilgrimage to visit one of these shrines in their lifetime. For many, going on a pilgrimage meant walking or riding long distances and eating and sleeping in roadside taverns or religious houses. Many men and women made the journey to fulfill a vow to God, to seek a cure for a disease, or to travel abroad. Monks were men who chose to live apart from society and to devote their lives to the church. They spent their lives in monasteries, working on the land, studying, and praying. Monks were often the most educated people in Europe, especially in the early part of the Middle Ages. A monastery was a building or collection of buildings that housed monks. Monasteries were usually contained within high walls that provided certain amounts of protection. Women also joined the church. Women who devoted their lives to the church were called nuns. Nuns lived in convents or nunneries. Nuns received many of the same benefits as monks. They were educated and taught crafts and other skills. As the church grew in power and influence, it became very wealthy. The church raised taxes and it owned land. People who held powerful positions within the church often came from wealthy noble families. They gave large amounts of money to the church. The church also influenced political decisions and supported or opposed kings. It's a painting from the 1400s showing kneeling nuns in prayer. Not only powerful people gave money to the church, all Christians were required to pay 1/10 of their earnings to the church. This payment was known as a tithe. However, there was a troubling side to this deeply religious period in history. Some people expressed ideas with which the Pope and the other church leaders disagreed. Church leaders called these contradictory opinions heresy, and the people who held them were called heretics. Heretics were treated cruelly. The interior of the Domino Cathedral of Pisa, England, began in the 11,000s. Goodness gracious. All right, precious books. During the Middle Ages, monks and nuns studied the writings of ancient Greeks and Romans. Their libraries contained books about religion, science, poetry, mathematics, and history. Monks and nuns also copied ancient writings by hand. There were no machines or printers that made books. By copying these texts, monks and nuns helped to preserve or save ancient knowledge that would otherwise have been lost. In the late Middle Ages, the higher social classes who could read and even write owned their own prayer books, such as the Book of Hours. These prayer books were read at different times of the day. In addition to prayers, the books included biblical texts, calendars, hymns, and painted pictures. Many of the books produced by the monks and nuns contained exquisite art and design features. After the Middle Ages, as a result of Jonas Gutenberg's invention of the printing press around 1450, more affordable books were produced. These printed books began to replace the beautifully handmade books and made these original manuscripts even more rare. Pages from the Book of Hours created in the early 1400s for John, Duke of Berry, France. If you were a monk, young boys like you are often given a monastery. Even a serf can become a monk. Therefore, if you are not destined to become a craftsman or a merchant, then becoming a monk is a good option. Life within a monastery certainly is hard. However, you are assured of a place to sleep, clothing, food, medical care, and education. Your training will take many years. When you start your training, you are called a novice, another word for beginner. You begin by learning to read and write. You study texts from the Bible, pray, learn to farm, or to acquire a certain skill. If at the end of your training, you are certain you want to join the church, you take part in the special ceremony. In the ceremony, you vow or promise to dedicate your life to God. You also vow not to marry and to live a humble and obedient life. Then, the top of your head is shaved, identifying you as a monk. As a monk, you spend a large part of your day in worship and prayer. However, you also spend time working on the land or in the monastery itself. You might wash clothes or cook or tend to the vegetable garden. You might learn to make honey, wine, or beer. You might learn how to make shoes or furniture. If you have a beautiful singing voice, you might participate in the performance of Gregorian chants. Gregorian chants are a form of sacred vocal music or musical speech based on the hymns or passage from the Bible. Monks perform these chants on certain holy days. As a gifted artist, you might work in the scriptorium, copying the works of classical writers or producing new books. For many, like you, the life of a monk provides a degree of security and protection for some of the challenges of medieval life. Here is a monk's daily schedule, prayer schedule, different things they have to read at different times of the day. Medieval musings. What did monks and nuns write with? What did monks and nuns write with? Clue, this writing tool was once attached to a creature that can fly. Number 2, certain religious people provided serfs with medical care. Who do you think these people were? And there we go with our letter quest. Find the letter in the stained glass window and record it on activity page 2.3. Find your letter. Thank you for listening. Join me next time. Have a good day.